Hey listeners, Bookish Flights has been nominated for the Women in Podcasting Awards in the Authors and Books category. If you could head over to www.womenpodcasters.com/vote and vote for Bookish Flights in the Author and Books category, I would greatly appreciate it. Your vote would go a long way in helping the podcast gain visibility and spread our love for books and reading. Head to the show notes to get a direct link to vote. Thank you. Hi, I'm Cara Infante, and this is Bookish Flights. In each episode, I chat with one bookish guest as we take some time to sample and savor the pairing recommendations from their bookish flight. We hope to give you suggestions to cultivate your TBR list and nurture your leisure time through books. In today's episode, I am chatting with Gill Paul. Gill is the best-selling, award-winning author of 12 historical novels, many of them about real women from the past whom she thinks have been marginalized or misjudged by historians. Gill was born in Scotland and grew up there. Apart from an eventful year at a school in the US when she was 10. She studied medicine at Glasgow University, then English literature and history. She was a student for a long time, before moving to London to work in publishing. Her first novel was written on weekends, but she has now given up the day job to write fiction full-time. Gill swims daily, year-round, in a wild pond and loves vintage clothes, old movies, and poking around in bookshops. Welcome to the show, Gill.
Hi, Cara. It's fantastic to be here. Thanks so much for inviting me.
You are so welcome. I am so glad to have you after just finishing up your latest book, Scandalous Women, a few weeks ago. I absolutely loved it. So what number book is this for you?
Scandalous Women's number 13, and I'm now writing number 14. I'm in the middle of it.
I'd love to start with a little bit about who you are, because I feel like you're so much more than this bio here. So can you tell us about you?
Well, I mean, I love writing, and I wrote a lot of non-fiction as well, but with fiction, I just, I love losing myself in a world and imagining, and just the feeling of bringing it all to life, hopefully. I swim every day, as you said. That's a big part of me, actually. That's year round, breaking the ice in January.
I was thinking that as I was reading that. I'm like, how cold is it when you're doing this?
Well, it gets very warm in summer, but it's absolutely beautiful pond with, we see the ducklings being born every year. And then there's a heron that comes and steals them. It's just nature going on, even though I'm in the middle of a big city. I live in London.
Okay.
With my partner, who's an artist and a filmmaker, which comes in very handy when I need little videos and photos for my publishers. I can just grab him into the office and say, quick, can you do this one for me?
Oh, I love that you two can work together there on that.
Yeah, we do. We do a bit.
So do you guys swim together then as well? Or is
God, no, he wouldn't. No, there's no way how we could get him up there. It's actually a women-only pond. There is a separate men's pond. It's an old historic thing, goes back to women started swimming there in 1905, and it's been going on ever since. There's lifeguards, and it's big, and just very wild, and they take very good care of it. There's a lot of flowers round about, so it's just, I usually go at lunchtime, and it's just such a beautiful pause in the middle of the day, and a good thinking time as well. Plus,
I am so intrigued.
In the changing room up there, you can find an expert on anything you want, no matter what I'm writing. If it's about racehorses or whatever it might be, there's always an expert there.
I love that. So I've literally, I'm assuming there's women only ponds, but I'd never have even thought that this is a thing. I'm not a swimmer myself, as you can tell. Yeah. So, but how fun. What a unique, almost little club that you are a part of.
It is. Yeah. No, it's got very popular in summer months. So we now have to book swimming slots, which is a shame. It takes away the spontaneity, but just too many people had heard about it. And but in winter, you just wander up whenever you like.
And others are swimming year round as well. So it's not just you.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I grew up in Chicago, and they do this fundraiser called the Polar Plunge, where you jump in Lake Michigan in February, and it's so cold. The air temperature is freezing, the water's freezing, and I've done it one time and I think I dipped my big toe and I was like, okay, I'll come and support from the sand, but I don't know about getting in anymore.
There's a lot of research on the health benefits, but it's definitely not for everybody. No,
Yeah.
it's really not.
Well, you're right. Yeah, there's the cold plunge tubs and all of that are really being a smash hit and again, like you said, probably for their health benefits, but it sounds like torture to me.
Okay, you don't have to do it.
No, that's but you're right. I could probably train myself and I could try it. I'm up to trying anything. But okay, well, why don't we have Scandalous Women that came out yesterday? Can you tell us about this book for the listeners?
Scandalous Women is, I think the elevator pitch is it's Mad Men set in the world of publishing, and this is 1960s publishing when the men are as misogynist as it comes. And there's two women novelists, based on real characters. Jacqueline Suzanne is publishing Valley of the Dolls in 1966. And just after that, Jackie Collins, the British author, is publishing The World is Full of Married Men. And they get treated appallingly by their publishers, by these men in suits. And so I have both of them as characters. And I also have a fictional character, Nancy, who works in the publishing company that is publishing Valley of the Dolls. And I kind of weave the story of their relationship together and the way they dealt with the outcry, because their books were seen as really scandalous, as it says in the title.
Yeah.
They were attacked by the literary establishment. The critics, got very sniffy about, these women who dare to write about sex and said they were bringing down the temple of literature. Then there were obviously religious objections. They got sacks of hate mail from the public about it. And they were criticized by the feminists as well. So it was really coming at them from all sides. But they knew, and Jacqueline Suzanne in particular started the tradition of authors going on book tour, going into bookstores and meeting the readers herself. And they came in droves and they absolutely loved that. She knew that if she could bypass the reviewers and just get to the readers, and she managed to get loads and loads of people reading who never normally picked up a book. She crossed that divide. She
Yeah.
made them interested in what she had to say. And she actually changed the way that authors work from now on, because we do have to go out there and meet our readers in whatever way we can manage. And this is, very kind of you to do this podcast, because it's one way that I can talk directly to readers through you.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think they did an amazing service for every woman who writes.
Absolutely. And as reading it, and to your point of how they were getting it from all sides, and it made me think of even in the publishing house, right? They're getting it from the misogynistic coworkers on
Oh
the
yeah.
back end as well. And it makes me think of what I guess I take for granted when I go into the workforce today of like, there are women that went before me that they've had
Mm.
to deal with that in all realms.
And there are laws against it now, against sort of grabbing women's bodies in the workplace, but there just weren't then. You just put up with it.
Yeah.
It's really quite shocking. Ugh. And I did, this is partly autobiographical. I mean, I wasn't working in the 1960s in publishing, a bit later. But when I started, certainly I had, actually, I better be careful about this, but there were men who dated women who were their secretaries or junior to them in the workplace and put pressure on them in various ways. So I did come up against a lot. This is pre-Me Too movement. So I've
Yeah.
had personal experience of some of this.
Yeah. And I just kept thinking of how tough their skin must have been, and I imagine that's a skill you have to cultivate, right? It's just to receive the hate mail, to receive
Mm.
these things going on in the office, and just to push past that and just brush it off because that is hard to be assaulted with that constantly.
Yeah. I'm not sure they did totally brush it off in public. They
Yeah.
did. I spent one evening just sitting watching all the YouTube videos I could find of their TV interviews, and they're extraordinary. And there's some
Yeah.
horrific ones where they're attacked by the studio. Jackie Collins, in particular, is attacked by a studio audience in one particular chat show, and you can see twitches in her face that
Yeah.
it's really getting to her, but outwardly she's calm, she answers the questions, she's very articulate and classy, very classy lady. And yeah, but I think it obviously when you're attacked so consistently for so long, it does pay, take a price, take a toll on you.
Yeah.
I would imagine.
Yeah.
I've
And
never, thank goodness, been in that position. I hope I never
absolutely.
am.
Absolutely. And to your point about drawing in all of the a different subset of readers, and I'm imagining like the housewives of the 1960s, right? Who
Mm,
probably didn't have much time to read. So to escape in a book that really transported them, into
yeah.
the world of romance and to give them something to love and something I loved. That was really how I fell back into reading as an adult, was when I
Mm,
had babies in the house and I'd be stuck in the chair feeding and doing all these
mhm.
things. I'd always have a book nearby, and it didn't seem so long when I was strapped to the chair, right, for lack of a better term, but that I would be in a book and I'd be transported to another world. And I'm like, oh,
Yeah.
okay, I just sat here for 45 minutes. I got the baby to sleep and I read my book in some other
Yeah.
place.
And you don't always want high literature by
No,
dead white men. You really don't.
I was too tired to digest that.
Entertainment and maybe a bit of aspirational kind of, if I were super wealthy, here's the kind of house I could have.
Yeah.
That they were doing that as well. They were rich, they were famous, and they were having sex with gorgeous men. So what's not to like? I mean, I'm not a person that divides books into literature and non-literature, but they're unashamedly commercial. They just wanted to entertain their readers.
Yeah. And I mean, I think we all can understand, right, that there are some books that take more mental capacity
Hmm.
to digest than something that just skirts you away through the pages very quickly. And so
Yeah,
I think we
absolutely.
all have read both ends of the spectrum of those
Yeah,
books. So
yeah.
had you read The Valley of Dolls, or what was Jackie Collins again? It's skipping my
The world
mind.
is full of married
The
men.
World is Full of Married Men,
Yeah.
before you had written this novel?
I hadn't. And in fact, it was somebody that contacted me on Instagram who said her favorite novel, my novel that had just come out, was her second favorite. And so I asked her, well, what's your favorite? And she said Valley of the Dolls. I thought, oh, interesting. And I think that's the little nugget that started me thinking about the whole idea behind this novel,
Yeah.
was just that conversation. But as a kid, I used to steal my dad's, teenager, not kid. I used to steal my dad's Jackie Collins novels and flick through them looking for the naughty bits, which
Yeah.
I knew were in there.
And you felt a little scandalous while doing it,
A little scandalous.
probably.
It's a very strange way to learn about sex, but
Yeah. That's very
not like
funny.
real life at all. But hey,
So, when you start a project like that, so you get this little nugget of an idea, and I'm imagining the extensive research that you did to put into this novel. How long does that process take you?
I usually research over the summer where I'll just read everything that I can find and then start writing in October. That's roughly the schedule I work to.
Okay.
But with Jackie Collins, there's not much. There aren't biographies. There's a certain amount of profiles in magazines and newspapers. There's a wonderful documentary about her that was made with the cooperation of her daughters and her sister, Joan Collins. The director was Laura Ferry, and I do recommend watching that.
Okay.
But I know quite a few people in London who knew her. So I was once, or who met her or had some interaction with her. And I did not meet anyone who had a bad word to say about her. Nobody. She just sounds charming, generous, hugely professional.
Yeah. What a
And
lovely connection that you've been able to kind
yeah,
of have a once removed someone to get
yeah.
the research.
No, so first-hand research, really, in that sense. I mean, there are biographies of Jackie Suzanne, one by her husband, Irving, in fact,
Yeah.
and another maybe less flattering one. But yeah, so there was a lot more information available about her. But the women that I've written about, and this is kind of my USP, if you like, is that I find women, usually 20th century women, that I think maybe have been misrepresented or not given their fair due. And then I will try and uncover what I can and give what I think their lives might have been like and what they were like. And certainly Jacqueline Suzanne was ridiculed, and she was ridiculed not for her books so much, but for her appearance, for the great big eyelashes and the big hair, and she always wore putchy print, brightly colored jumpsuits and dresses. And I'm like, it's fair game to criticize an author's writing style, but it just got so personal around her. I
Yeah.
wanted to redress the balance on that a little bit, maybe.
Yeah. And that would be hard to shield off. Back to like trying to push out these comments, but when
Yeah.
you're attacking your personal appearance, that's Oh, that hurts.
Yeah, well, Truman Capote called her a truck driver in drag, which no woman can put up with that,
Yeah.
It's horrible and just uncalled for. And obviously he was famously bitchy, and that's par for the course. But yeah, and she had a long running, battle of the wits with him anyway.
Yeah. So this being your 13th novel, which has been your favorite one to write?
Oh, golly. Um, Possibly this one. It was a lot of fun to
Okay.
write, I think. And it's a little bit, the character of Nancy is slightly autobiographical, because she comes to work straight from college, she comes to work in a job in publishing, and I did the same.
Okay.
And she moved from her hometown to New York. I moved from Scotland to London to work in publishing. And I did have a very ill-advised relationship, which is similar to the one that Nancy has in the book. So it's probably the most autobiographical character I've ever written. And yeah, so a bit of a learning curve in many ways. I mean, I think with every novel you learn a bit more about the craft, and
Yeah.
maybe you get a little bit more confident that in what you're doing and how to fix things that might go wrong along the way. And but this one, I was thinking about that particular relationship in the past, and what what was I doing? I
Yeah.
mean, I was in my early 20s like Nancy was, but I mean, honestly, Jill, really.
Well, and I imagine that you learn about yourself as you continue to write as well, right? And this is a way for you to really take this introspective look at your past and hopefully heal from it or maybe be able to let it go a little bit, like
Yeah,
yeah, kind of explore that. But
yeah.
do you learn something about yourself as you write?
Well, I mean, this one perhaps more. I suppose authors are always using little bits of their own experience. I mean,
Sure.
I don't take characters directly from my life. There's no character in any of my novels that I would point to and say that's my sister.
Yeah.
But I might take a particular characteristic of hers. For example, she will never argue. She will do anything to avoid an argument. And I may have put that in I think No Place for a Lady. I think I used a character of a
Okay.
sister in there who just always avoids conflict, which can be problematic, obviously. Yeah, so you might take somebody's characteristic, but there's no whole character that you transplant and describe in your novels because it could be libelous apart from anything else. And
True.
I'm quite well versed on libel now, I should tell you, because I've written about real characters who
Yeah.
may have living relatives. Certainly, Jackie Collins' daughters and her sister are still alive. So the lawyers take an interest in what I'm doing.
Yeah.
They've cleared it, and a friend who knows the family has read it and said, I think it's a very affectionate picture of
Yeah.
her that I've given. So I hope they'll be okay with it.
Yeah. So what stage does that happen with the lawyers? Do they read that towards the end of the process?
After the editing,
After the editing.
I
Okay.
actually got legal advice midway through in this one as well, just to see the direction I was going was going to be all right.
Yeah.
And there is another complication with this book in that Jacqueline Suzanne has a son who spent his life in an institution
Yeah.
for mental disability, autism in particular. And I just made a decision very early on that, I mean, he's mentioned everywhere. You look at her Wikipedia page and he's mentioned. So I could mention him, but I wasn't going to describe him at all. I thought that really felt like it was off limits.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love historical fiction, and it's not a side I've ever thought of the legal side, right, of the libel side,
Mm,
and to ensure that. But I could see where that's a very important step of the
yeah.
process of your writing journey as well.
Yes. Yeah, I may be able to get a law degree at the end of this, the amount of time I spent talking to lawyers. My sideline.
Those little side paths you don't know your life is going to take, right? I'm like, oh, I
I
never
know.
thought I'm a
Yeah.
writer, but I never thought I'd be down this road of learning all about law.
Everybody needs a side hustle. Yeah.
Yeah. If you could go back to your younger self, what do you know now that you wish you had known back then when you started writing?
When I started writing, when my
Yeah.
first novel was published when I was 40, and there's so much advice that I would give to any friend who's just getting their first novel contract, because it's so exciting and thrilling, and you just think it's all going to work out from there on. You know, you've got a book deal. It's
Yeah.
amazing. I actually curled up in fetal position in the carpet, going, "Mama," just screaming. But it's not, you don't just get one book published and then you get slightly more readers and you get slightly more readers with each one, and you're not on an upward trend. It's not like that at all. It's, there's lots of ups and downs, and some books will be rejected, some books your publisher won't want the idea that you want to go with. You have to be very emotionally resilient, and I've
Yeah.
developed certain techniques that I use over the years to just kind of not let it get to me. But at the same time, I mean, I have author friends who treat it are very, very businesslike about it, who check their sales figures every day, who to see whether it's being influenced by anything they do, what strategies are working.
Sure.
You know what, Cara? I never check my sales figures. I'm like, if there's any good news, somebody will tell me, but
Yeah.
otherwise, I just don't want to be distracted by that. I just want to keep my positivity and confidence and carry on writing and not be told of won books. I mean, obviously you find out in the end when the royalties come in, and whether you've cleared your advance or what's happened.
Sure.
But for the time being, I don't need to look and see, oh my gosh, they're down on yesterday. That would
Yeah.
just be so distracting for me. And so that's part of my technique of emotional resilience, is just don't bother about these things.
Yeah.
Somebody else can take care of it.
They'll
My
contact me
part is
when
to
needed.
write. My part is to write the very best book I possibly can, and then round about publication date to talk about it and try and explain to people what it was, hopefully interest them in reading it. And then that's my job done, really.
Yes. Well, congratulations is in order because I did see that you've now reached 1 million book sales, which is
Yeah, I know. It's
amazing.
incredible. It just seems like an unimaginable number.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm
That's
really thrilled about that.
amazing. Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you.
Well, let's switch gears a little bit and let's talk about who you are as a reader. What type of genres do you enjoy?
I mostly read historical fiction, and I should vary that more. I've never liked reading crime. I don't like to be scared by what I'm reading. I don't like the tension.
Yeah.
I mean, although I recognize it's incredibly skillful to write a thriller or a crime novel. I mean, that's a wonderful talent to have. But no, I just love history, so I really like reading historical fiction. I read some contemporary as well.
Yeah.
And
Is there a certain time of day you read?
well, I live in London and I get public transport everywhere, so I'll always have a book in my bag or my Kindle or whatever, so in case you get stuck on the tube for an hour or
Yeah.
whatever. There's always a book in my bag for wherever I'm going to be. But I think every day I will read at bedtime for at least an hour. And so that's my main time reading in bed. I've got a really comfy bed and nice pillows.
Yeah.
So that's the best place.
Yeah, I have found I'm exactly like you in my reading. I don't love to be scared, and it's because I read at night, and I'm like, I don't want that on the brain when I go to bed. So
Yeah.
or I need to finish the book to make sure everybody's okay, which, I can't stay up till 2 a.m. reading every night either. So, I read very similar. I don't want to be scared.
I mean, not that historical fiction can't be scary. And I saw
Yeah.
that you had Kristen Hanna on recently, and the
Yeah.
women, the sections in Vietnam are just absolutely, heart in mouth.
Yes.
So well done. And I'm just staggered by, I mean, you can tell how much research she's done. She's spoken to lots of Vietnam vets. She's read all the memoirs of people who were there. And then it just reads like it flows like a story where you're in the shoes of the character. I'm such an admirer of hers. She's
Yeah.
brilliant.
Where I get so emotional over her books too because I am so
I know.
immersed in the character.
Well, of course, yes.
Yeah. Yes, it was an honor to have her on the show. I was very excited
Mm.
about that. So, and then you have been so gracious to bring a few of your favorite books as a book flight today. So, can you tell us a little bit about how you chose these?
I think you asked me to bring books that, favorite books or books that influenced me.
Yes.
So the first one, and in fact, this influenced Scandalous Women, it's Rona Jaffe's The Best of Everything, which was published in 1958. And it's about four women, young women, straight out of college, just arriving in New York. Two of them work in publishing. They become friends. They're trying to form careers, find love, put their lives together. And that really was an inspiration behind what I was doing with Scandalous Women. But I went back and read it recently, and it's not dated. I mean, obviously
Yeah.
it's set in 1952. It came out in 1958. So they don't have computers or mobiles, but it's very modern in the dialogue. And I think it was I mean, it was a hugely successful book at the time, but it's really well done.
Okay, I haven't read this one, so I'm gonna have to add this to my list. And I'm always surprised when I go back and read a book that, would quote unquote be considered a classic and how modern it can seem, or
Mm,
even it still can hold the test of time to events that are happening today. And it's like,
yeah.
as we read historical fiction, a lot of it's like, oh gosh, we're just repeating ourselves here or doing the same thing. But I definitely need to add this one to my list. So thank you very much
Mm,
for that. So that's The Best of Everything by Rona Jaffe. And what's the
yeah.
next book you brought today?
Well, my favorite author, probably, if I had to choose one favorite, which is very hard, it would be Barbara Kingsolver.
Okay.
And I have read everything that she's ever written. If there was any chance to read her shopping list, I would grab the opportunity. But in the past, before last year, I would have said my favorite was the Poisonwood Bible, but then Demon Copperhead came out last year, and it's just such an achievement. And it's about this young boy demon born in the Appalachian Mountains to, a drug addict mother and abusive stepfather is living with them in this trailer. And, he is born with so few chances in life. And it's based on the Dickens story, David Copperfield, but she makes you care about demons so much. And it's first person, it's seen from his point of view all the way
Wow.
through. This kid who certainly I had nothing, I knew nothing about the kind of life that he lived and the hardships. And I was just with him, rooting for him all the way through. And it's just so clever the way she gets you into the shoes of her characters. And it lives with you, it haunts you. I can imagine visually every single home and place that Demon lived in. And the whole book is very, very intense and
Yeah.
extraordinary and long, but you need to make a time commitment for it, but it's really worth it.
I imagine being immersed in his story, it tugs at your heartstrings too as you're reading it because it sounds like a very, almost what we would consider a tragic upbringing, right? And having all of these things stacked against you.
Tragic. And, with a really important point to make about the prescription drug epidemic
Yeah.
that's in the States, here as well at the moment. I know they're available here as well. And how addictive these drugs are that people are being prescribed and how much they wreck lives. So it's a very important point she's making as well, but not in a preachy way, just all through this particular character.
Yeah. Yeah, if you could dig, you can't dig, I don't know, you could dig deep on the prescription drug, almost a pandemic, the epidemic of that, but
Yeah.
how horrible it is and how it started. And
Yeah.
there's quite a few, I think, documentaries on it now. And it just, like gets the anger going in me of like, why is this even
Yeah.
a thing?
I know. Extraordinary.
Yeah.
Extraordinary. And, I don't want to get into trouble here, but the manufacturers know that they're making them addictive. I know
Yeah.
they do. It's
Yeah.
oops.
Okay, so that was Demon Copperhead by Barbara Kingsolver. And then what is the last book you brought today?
I always cite Paula McLean's The Paris Wife as the book that started me writing about real historical characters. For those who haven't come across it, it's about Ernest Hemingway's first wife, Hadley Richardson, and it's first person, it's beautifully told. It's just imagining her life with this young up and coming writer, Ernest, in Paris. And he's quite irascible. He's not an easy husband to have, but she's as supportive as she can be and tries to make their lives run smoothly. And I just love the way it takes a character, an unknown character really from history, and completely brings her to life and makes you imagine what it was like to be with this man. And I love it. I recommend it to absolutely everybody. And it was a light bulb moment for me because I thought, gosh, I could do that too. I could write about real people in my novels. You're allowed to do that. I suppose I
Yeah.
hadn't quite realized before. Yes.
Yeah, I this was my first Paula McLean book I read as well, and it really
Brilliant.
turned me on to her writing. And I was like, oh gosh, because I love learning exactly to your point, and with Scandalous
Yeah.
Women as well as these people in history that I didn't know anything about, but it helps you make sense of the story and like
Yeah.
understand in this instance, right? Ernest Hemingway a little bit more. And um,
Mhm.
I love books like that. So thank you to you and to Paula McLean for writing books like this. So us as readers, we can learn about these people from history.
Yes, no, I love learning from fiction, and Kristen Hanna obviously does that really well as well.
Yeah.
Um, Fabulous.
Yes, this is great. You've given me a lot to think about here today with the best of everything. That's one I got to add to my list. I haven't
Mhm.
read that one yet. So thank you for bringing these with you today. How I love to end our show is with our bonus pairings. These are just a speed round of questions. So you can answer these pretty quick. Are you a rereader?
Yes, I am. Not often, but I'll tell you what, when I'm ill, I love going back to Jane Austen. They're just so easy and easy reading and funny. She's so witty.
Yeah. That gives me an idea is I just finished last night. I sometimes try to give a bonus pairing of books, and I feel like I'm in the realm of historical fiction too, but have you read As Long as the Lemon Tree Grows by Zulfa Katu? And I just finished it last night, and it's actually written about events in Syria starting in 2011 with the
Mhm.
uprisings that were happening over there. And it almost is like another book that like is just hauntingly like these things are going on in the world and I had no idea. And it's written, she wanted to write about the character, not characters, but actually the Syrian, like the innocents amidst this
Mm.
uprising. But there's also a bit of a love story in there, and in the end she talks about how she wanted to have these Jane Austen like characters, so you might, or like
Oh.
a thread of the storyline, but taking you through real events that were happening in Syria in 2011 and 2012. And she's like, I'm not so much, all these books are written for us to understand the politics of what are happening in Syria, but we forget that there's the innocent people that
The
are
people.
caught amidst this. And it was beautiful, haunting almost, because you're thinking, I still am thinking about it this morning, and I'm probably will
Yeah.
still be thinking on it for another couple weeks.
That sounds extraordinary. I'm going to get that for
But yeah,
sure.
it's a great
Thank
book.
you.
And there's a quote in there. It's as long as the lemon tree goes. I'm going to butcher it right now because it's early, but there will be hope. And it's just kind of this thread that goes through the story, and it just gives me the chills. But it's a lovely book, and you
Oh,
might enjoy
wow.
it.
Yeah, I'm sure I would. Yeah,
Okay.
absolutely.
Well, as a little side note there, add that in as my dessert pairing today.
I will. I will.
Okay, and then let's go back to our speed round. So, what book has changed your life?
I was thinking back to my 20s, to the period, when this character Nancy was, I was just working in publishing, and a book I came across was by Gloria Steinem, The Revolution Within. And it's about feminism, but it's also a kind of basic introduction to therapy and some of the concepts there. And I particularly remember she's got a section about embracing your inner child. And I suddenly got what she meant about, because I was a very shy child, a bit scared of the world. And, as an adult, you can go back and you can just go, oh, poor you, that was hard, but you've made it through. You're all right now. It was a
Yeah.
really, yeah, I still remember loads of things that she wrote about in that book. I think Gloria Steinem's fabulous. Controversial sometimes, but yeah, that
Yeah.
goes with the territory.
Yes. Okay. And then I'm sorry, where is your favorite place to read?
In bed, for sure, in bed. Yeah.
You described that comfy,
Gotta be
cozy
comfortable.
pillows. Yeah.
Comfy. Yeah, a cup of chamomile tea, maybe. Yeah.
That sounds fabulous. And then lastly, what are you reading next?
Well, I'm currently reading, we've been talking about Kristen Hanna, and I'm currently reading The Great Alone because I suddenly
Oh,
remembered I hadn't read that one, and it's about Alaska. But I'm also just about to start a book by Frances Spufford called Cahokia Jazz.
okay.
And I've got high hopes for that. It's set in a fictional town in the 1920s, and he's very ambitious with what he does with historical fiction and moves time frames a bit. And yeah, no, I'm looking
Oh,
forward to it.
oh, that sounds very intriguing. I haven't heard of him before, but I love that
Mm.
twist on historical fiction. Okay. And then The Great Alone, I had never wanted to visit Alaska more than I did after I finished that book.
I'm feeling the same way. Absolutely. It just sounds so stunningly beautiful, but
Yes.
the terrifying nature of the winters, my gosh.
Yeah, that seems daunting for sure. Well, thank you so much for coming on the show today. I know your time is precious and I appreciate all you've given me.
Oh, it's been my pleasure. What fun and what great questions. Thank
You're
you.
very welcome. Thank you so much for listening to this episode today with Gill Paul and books that have influenced her writing. See more at bookishflights.com. That is also where you can find more information about today's book flight or other books that we talked about. I want to inspire a community of readers. So whenever you share a post about what you are reading or what you are reading next, especially if you have heard about it on the show, please tag us on Facebook or Instagram at Bookish Flights. If you enjoyed the show, please head over to Apple Podcasts and leave a review. Your review not only helps the show, but it also helps the podcast to reach others. Make sure you are subscribed on Apple Podcasts or Spotify to make sure you will not miss an episode. That's it for today. Thank you so much for listening. As Emma Thompson said, I think books are like people in the sense that they'll turn up in your life when you most need them. Cheers to you, dear readers. Until next time.